Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network underway. Monday edition is here. 6th and Peabody, our location, with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. If you're joining us across the radio network, we say thank you to this great radio partner. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you can find us streaming live daily through the OutKick channel on YouTube. We hope you'll subscribe. You can find all the great shows there as we kick things off on this Monday. Chad, we've got another jam-packed show. We've got Dan Dockett, who will join us, host of Don't At Me on OutKick in 20 minutes. A lot to dive into there. Brett McMurphy from CBS Sports has crushed it with the reporting of conference realignment. That will continue with our conversation with him in regards to Oregon and Washington and the Big Ten. And a bit later, Doc Holliday. Yes, Doc Holliday. He is a former Memphis Tiger football player. He is now the sports director for WMC-TV Channel 5 in Memphis with all things Ja Morant. And Chad, first off, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You know, normally we come in here on a Monday and Matty Ice, who's in studio with us, he just questions us, says, why are you here?
Right.
What do you bring to the table? You guys can't make it to Friday. You can't complete 15 hours of show by the end of the week. But today, Matty I said, you know what I need you guys to do today? Bring the energy.
We've got it.
Bring the energy on this Monday, and that is exactly what I plan to do.
It's exactly what Boston did yesterday in Game 7. It's the opposite of what the Philadelphia 76ers and Harden and Embiid did. There's a top quarterback recruit that has flipped from Ohio State who's now going to Georgia, which will be a huge headline today. But the headline of the weekend is Ja Morant has learned nothing. Suspended indefinitely by the Memphis Grizzlies, and we await another investigation of the NBA as he is on Instagram Live seen holding a gun, flashing it in a car. Not his account, but again, here is Ja Morant with video surfacing doing exactly what got him suspended 2 months earlier. Suspended in March, where he then has sit-down interviews, pretending to be contrite, saying that he's going to get situations in his life worked out off the court because he's one of the best on it, and has everything to lose, not just being one of the top players in the NBA. He signed an exclusive deal as an individual player with Nike. He's got his own shoe. He had Powerade for the first time in, 5 years, signed an endorsement deal with any athlete whatsoever. Powerade through Coca-Cola has paused that, and that was ready to launch about a week after his suspension happened in March. And he also met with the commissioner and Adam Silver in New York after going away for a couple of days for therapy in Florida. He's up in New York meeting with Adam Silver, where Silver's releasing statements saying he knows exactly where we stand on this, he knows our policies, and while we couldn't prove he had a weapon and brought a weapon to Denver, he was seen on surveillance footage at a strip club with a gun, and he gets suspended 8 games. And if they could have proven without a doubt that he was on the team plane with it or at a hotel with it or on the team bus with it, he would have been suspended for the minimum of 50 based on the CBA. 2 months later, this happens again, and now we head into the offseason where it's uncertain what's going to happen with Ja Morant. But we do know, Chad, this is pure stupidity on his end.
Pure stupidity, and you can't trust him. I mean, we knew that when all the other incidents were piling up. And now, the one thing, I mean, there's a lot of things you can't do if you're Ja Morant based on the string of incidents.
Right.
This is not just flashing a gun at a strip club in Denver. What led to that was reports of the NBA investigating you and your crew with a gun with a laser pointer focused on an NBA team's bus as they left Memphis. This comes after reports of you and your crew going to a mall and threatening some Foot Locker manager with a gun and threatening to beat him up in the parking lot and approaching him. This comes after you got into a physical altercation with a high school kid at your house during a pickup basketball game, and the threat of violence was there as well. There are a lot of false equivalencies being made here. And this is the top one I've seen since this story came out. Well, what about the Second Amendment? It's not illegal to show a gun in a video. It's not illegal. No one's asking for the guy to be arrested. But I guarantee you his employer, the Memphis Grizzlies in the NBA, decided after the last incident, which was number 3 or 4 on the list, that he was going to have to adhere to a certain code of conduct moving forward in order to not be suspended for a lengthy amount of time. And make no mistake about it, he's about to be suspended for a lengthy amount of time. People want to point to Andy Ogles and say, well, it's okay if it's a white U.S. representative from Tennessee that flashes a gun in a photo, but not this black kid that plays in the NBA. Well, Andy Ogles looks stupid too when he poses with AR-15s with his entire family under a Christmas tree. I think that's dumb. Both things can be true. We can talk about both. They both look stupid. The difference here, though, is Andy Ogles does not have a history of threatening people with guns. He doesn't have a video of himself at a strip club with the AR-15 in tow. That's the difference between him and John Morant. It's not that they're black and white. That's not it. This is not a racism thing. This is an intelligence thing. John Morant does not appear to have any. He is a kid from a middle-class home that was not some gangbanger growing up that decided to get famous and get a lot of money, and for whatever reason, he wants to be a gangbanger now. And I do not understand it. And I guarantee you, when Michael Wilbon is going on television and saying, I'm not going to allow my kid to wear John Morant shoes, there are going to be other sponsors that follow the lead on this. And John Morant, you could go back and replay what Hutton and I said about this initially when the whole Pacers thing was going on. John Morant must pick his friends better. He must distance himself from friends and family. Maybe, just maybe, John Morant didn't know he was on Instagram Live. It's possible. He could have thought they were taking a selfie of themselves in the car. Does not matter. The stupidity must stop. Point being here, Hutton, I'm not letting him out and giving excuses for him. He's got to be better, and he's got to get better people around him.
Well, I've said that far too often throughout this string of incidents, it has been about the people around him. And whenever the suspension took place, I said, when he comes back, now it's on John Morant. And the Memphis Grizzlies took swift action and released a statement saying they've suspended him indefinitely. And everything upon his return would be pending league review, and that they would have no further comment at this time. The league has said this too, but again, remember, the league and Adam Silver met with him in March, face-to-face, at league offices, and they suspended him for 8 games at the time due to conduct detrimental to the league. And while the league's release said it did not conclude that the gun at issue belonged to Morant, talking about the Denver issue, it was brought to him into the nightclub or was displayed by him for beyond a brief period, and that's all they could confirm. But the full statement from Adam Silver points to what could be a big-time suspension. And I'm thinking, Chad, along the lines of what we see whenever a player in the NFL right now is caught sports betting. They're suspended indefinitely, and it's at least a year. There has to be consequences for actions instead of slaps on the wrist, which they have done along the way. And here was the quote from Adam Silver at the time, right after the meeting when they handed down the suspension. Ja's conduct was irresponsible, reckless, and potentially very dangerous. It also has serious consequences given his enormous following and influence, particularly among young fans who look up to him. He's expressed sincere contrition and remorse for his behavior. Ja's also made it clear to me that he has learned from this incident and that he understands his obligations and responsibility to the Memphis Grizzlies and the broader NBA community extend well beyond his play on the court. That is from the commissioner of the league. Here was Ja Morant with Jalen Rose after this was all laid out by Commissioner Silver.
You at the spot, Shotgun Willie's. You are holding a gun, and we both know how dangerous that can be. Whose gun were you holding?
Well, the gun wasn't mine. It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence, but I take full responsibility for my actions. Made a bad mistake, and I can see the image that I painted over myself with my recent mistakes. But in the future, I'm gonna show everybody who John really is, what I'm about, and change this narrative.
The suspension came down March 20th. That was shortly after. And he says he's going to show everyone who Ja really is. And now we see this on Instagram Live over the weekend as we sit here in the middle of May, not even 2 months earlier.
Didn't he go to therapy or something for less than a week?
Yeah, it was just a couple of days.
I didn't.
Yeah, counseling.
I almost felt a little bit bad about it at the time when I said it. I didn't believe him then in this apology and interview with Jalen Rose. Certainly don't believe him now.
Well,
you can just hear the way he's saying it. It's as if a lawyer said, here are the main talking points. Was not your gun. No excuses, though. This is not who I am. Hit those points over and over. Mm-hmm. He does not sound like a man who believes what he's saying. He doesn't sound like a man who had the idea that basketball may be taken from him and all the wealth and fame that comes with it may go away from this. He did not get that fear in this whole story. Hutton, I think he's going to have it now because I think this is a year suspension at least that he should face after all of this. I really think they're going to throw the book at him, the NBA will, and the Grizzlies.
And he signed a massive contract with Memphis, and then these string of incidents take place. And he's in year 4. He's just wrapping up year 4. Make no mistake, he's one of the most talented players in the NBA. He is a brand. The brands are behind him. The signature shoe, the Powerade commercials that were already shot, the marketing campaign that was set to be released. There are other sponsors as well. But the way it was treated 2 months ago was as if he was just diagnosed with a terminal illness and had to go do something out of state,
healthy.
And we will comment on it later, and we're with him. It was not the way that the league or the team has responded now. Now, I will say, like they changed policies in order to protect him from himself, from the people around him, and that really all changed around the Pacers incident, Chad. That's where the talk started, but then there was the snowball effect, and within a month and a half, all of a sudden, they weren't staying over an extra day in certain cities as other teams would. If you go to L.A. and you've got a day in between games, you stay the night in L.A. for the most part, and then you fly out to Salt Lake. Instead of going to Salt Lake early, the players want to stay in Los Angeles. That makes sense. In certain cities, the Grizzlies said, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to put our group in that situation. Part necessity and part protection of the player from himself, which he clearly can't do on his own. And that's the sad reality of this, is he hasn't learned anything, and now it's on him, and everything's right there laid out in front of him, and he's still hanging out and doing the same exact things yet again.
When we talk to our Memphis guest later, I want to ask him about the Grizzlies organization and if they've done enough with all of this, because I don't think that they have. When you're having to have team meetings after this happens about conduct on the road, then that is an organization that's not all that professional with their team. And that's what the Grizzlies organization strikes me as from a team culture, locker room perspective. So we'll talk to them about that. But Ja Morant, and I want to ask Dan Dockich about his impact on winning for the Grizzlies. I think he's very talented, and he's a superstar with some of his highlights. They didn't take a huge step back when he wasn't there late in the season.
Well, not this year, but he was, number 4 in the NBA MVP voting a year ago.
Yeah,
I mean, he was sensational.
But there are guys that are superstars. Carmelo Anthony's one I'd put in that, who I think won a league MVP or always finished close to it. Didn't impact winning all that much. When you took them away, sometimes the team was about the same. I'm not saying the Grizzlies got better.
Joel Embiid, Sixers won game 1 of that series without him.
There are guys. Now take Jokic, for example, off the Nuggets and what happens. I think he impacts winning in more ways because of the assists and all the other ways he impacts the game and how they run the offense through him.
But he's their franchise. Morant is their franchise.
I would agree with that. We'll talk to Dan, though, from a basketball sensibility part of it, just how much he does that. One other quick thing on guns, because this is a hot-button issue right now, okay? Yep. Because everyone is immediately the quick knee-jerk reaction I talked about to say, well, why is this okay and not this? Once people understand the full Ja Morant story, they do a pretty good job of saying, oh, now I see why he's an idiot. Yeah, that's bad. When you look at everything else that went into this, it's not just that one video. And I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a believer in the right to own guns, all those things. The gun owners that I knew growing up, that I know now, are very, very respectful of guns. You don't bring them out. If you get an invite to someone's gun cabinet that's locked up or locker and they show you something, the gun owners I know are very respectful of those weapons. There is a lack of respect of weapons like this. We're seeing it with John Morant, how for whatever reason, when that camera comes on, he's got to go get the guns. His props are live weapons. That's what he's got to go get to show in the video. It's disrespectful to the weapon and sets an awful precedent. I mentioned Andy Ogles earlier. Same thing. I think when you got little children sitting around with AR-15s in the air on Christmas morning, that sets a dangerous precedent. I do not understand the need to go immediately to social media and pose for pictures with the weapons. And John Morant is a byproduct of all of this and that culture. Now, he's an idiot. I'm not condoning it for that reason, but we got to get away from this whole thing that it's just cool to, rap to song lyrics and then hold a gun in a video. It's stupid.
Well, and he's, allegedly made threats about, come face the barrel and other tweets, which was part of the string of all these incidents. And again, it's all leading up to what we saw over the weekend. Kwame Brown, #1 overall pick in 2001, went off on John Morant. Turned the video on, and he's been known to rant. And he lit into Morant over the weekend. Full stories at OutKick.com. Tore into him over the culture of figuring out and learning, hey, you don't always have to pull out the gun when the rap song's on and flash weapons to act street. Kwame Brown's words, and we could play it, but we'd have to bleep out half the audio right now. Again, available at OutKick.com. But lit into him. Stephen A. Smith, among others, lighting him up over this. Because, again, it is a trend and a pattern and not a one-off incident. Even Sauce Gardner, who's sitting courtside with Aaron Rodgers, and he's responding on social media as the starting corner, current defensive NFL Rookie of the Year. Everybody has guns, bro. No need to post it on Instagram Live, LOL. He since deleted this tweet, but his initial response was, Morant did it again? And it's May 14th, it's May 13th when this is going down, and John Morant did it again? Didn't we just watch the apology video with Jalen Rose setting him up for the PR answer that was memorized? Everybody knows how stupid this looks. It's not a political issue as much as it is just a stupidity and a sad string of events that leads me to think that this guy has no clue who's really around him and who's representing him at all times. No, it wasn't his Instagram account. But he's behind the wheel, and he's hanging out with someone that's going on Instagram Live less than 2 months after he was just suspended from the league and had to go meet with the commissioner about it for doing the same thing.
It's dumb. It's so stupid. And it's hard for me to grasp the level of stupidity to do the exact same thing that just had that carrot of basketball and your future in basketball taken away from you for a bit, and then you go and do the exact same thing. It is so incredibly dumb.
So now the question comes, did it happen this quickly again because the suspension was so light to begin with, because it was just a slap on the wrist? Or is there more to it now? And if the NBA comes down with a harsh suspension, what message does that send? How does that help John Morant? And what precedent is the league trying to set? Because this is also the same league that changed their dress code.
Based off Malice in the Palace.
No doubt. And so now Adam Silver, who was underneath David Stern at the time, how does he now react to this less than 2 months after sitting down face-to-face with Morant and release the statement that he did back in the middle of March? We'll pick up there with Dan Dockich next on Hot Mic.
You know what? Sometimes as we begin tonight's epic series of icon Steph Curry against icon LeBron James with street clothes Anthony Davis, we sometimes forget that Steph Curry is in the conversation of greatest of all time. We usually do. We forget that. We just kind of take him for granted, I think, and we shouldn't. This dude just dropped 50 in a playoff Game 7. First time that has ever happened. And I want you to think about this for just a second. First time that has ever happened in the NBA, in a Game 7. Now, with all due respect, there's a lot of great basketball players in and around the NBA, a lot of great scorers over the years, a lot of iconic players like Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm talking about scorers now. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, hell, Alex English, George Gervin. I mean, dudes that back in the day, David Thompson used to go get 60 occasionally. And not one guy ever, not ever, scored 50 in a Game 7 until Steph Curry came along. It's really unbelievable. He's 35 years old. You've never heard anything out of Steph Curry other than family and team and humble and willing to help. I think it's time we give him at least a little more accolades for everything around him. All right, stock up, LeBron James. Now, LeBron James is one of those guys that's trying hard. He wants to be more than he wants to be, or more than an athlete, and that's great. And by all accounts, very good as an executive producer. His team, led by Maverick Carter, his guys, posse, whatever you want to call it, from his hometown, do a great job. He's had some missteps. The fake racial stuff on his walls in L.A. was ridiculous, and he's made some stupid racial comments. But you know what? He's out here trying. He's out here taking a swing. Seems to love his kids and his wife, although there is some speculation, as there always is going to be. But this dude, at his age, is ridiculous, and what he does on a nightly basis is absolutely absurd. And sometimes all we do is complain about LeBron James because, well, frankly, we get LeBron James stuffed down our throats every single day. It's called, in the world of ESPN and others, playing the hits. Used to be you had to talk about Brett Favre and LeBron James. Now you got to talk about Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James, or else you don't have a show. Throw in a little bit of Mark Cuban, throw in Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy, and you've got 6 morning hours of ESPN television. That's just the way it works. We're enthralled. LeBron James, 38 years old, man, and he's still out here doing it. I feel like I've been watching LeBron James, if he's 38, for 23 years, since he's about 15 years old. He's done it under the world spotlight, and he's done it really, really well. 4 titles for him, 4 titles for Curry. Look, if one of them gets one this year, that puts him above the other, in my opinion. Nobody ever thinks that. We always compare Michael Jordan and LeBron James, but it might be time to start comparing Steph Curry to LeBron James. That's how good Steph Curry is.
Chad, how was Mother's Day yesterday for you and the family?
Very nice.
Nice.
Went out to my mom's house, had a nice cookout. My nephew, who's about to graduate from college, handled all the grilling. We were all very skeptical.
How was it?
That this young man could handle it, but he did a great job.
He's a Withrow.
He's got his own recipe for patting out his own burgers. Had his own little marinade mix ready. Patties were nice and thick. It's perfect. Had a good day.
I'm same. Went to my sister's house. Had a wonderful lunch that she always crushes it, and so does Dan Dockich. Hosted Don't At Me. My guess is Dan is.
I feel like he mans the grill.
A master grill. A grillist, Dan Dockich. How are you, Dan? Host of Don't At Me across the OutKick Network. Good to see you, man.
I ate. My wife and I took a 10-hour drive to Princeton, New Jersey, watched Harvard win the Ivy League
Nice.
tournament. My stepdaughter's stud third baseman. And I ate so much crap that when we got home yesterday, I started a 36-hour cleanse at 8 o'clock last night. So whatever hour I'm into this thing, it is so miserable. I'm never miserable. But, man, I got to tell you, I was reading about what a 36-hour cleanse does for you, and it's supposed to do all these great things. So I decided I can go from 8 last night to 8 tomorrow morning. But son of a gun, is this thing miserable. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Is this a cleanse that involves taking things that cleans your system out, or just a fasting for 36 hours?
Yes.
Okay, so you're fasting for 36
fasting,
hours.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're not joining us from your bathroom, is what you mean?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
No, but I have a story about joining you one time about a year ago after I did this 36-hour cleanse, but I don't want to say it on air. It's disgusting. But
We
I can
appreciate
imagine.
that. Thank you.
I can imagine.
Thank you for saving that one.
Dan, what does the NBA
Yeah.
do to Ja Morant now, given the fact that we've read and seen all the statements, and it's not like we have to go back to a year and a half ago. We just turn the page and go back to March, and here it is middle of May, and the league is conducting yet another investigation in what could be and should be a lengthy suspension.
yeah, you know, he's not very smart. Chad was great on my show this morning because he was just saying that. I don't know if he's sticking it to him. I don't know if he didn't know he was on Instagram. I don't know if he's just that stupid. I think it's a combination of all three. I think the NBA has a serious situation on their hand. You know, a lot of people are saying, if somebody posted a gun of a guy hunting, you wouldn't do anything. But this is not the only incident. There are numerous incidents. And here's the deal with it. You know, you read something in the paper and you go, okay, well, that's, that may or may not be true. But, the NBA has investigators, and they investigate these things, whether it's the deal with his mother, or whether it's a deal with the kid at his home, or something like this, something like the previous gun deal. So the NBA has to know the facts, and I'm guessing they know all the facts in all of these pertinent cases. So if, let's just say that all of the facts are what has been reported, then you got to suspend Morant. You can't just let guys flash guns. Now, somebody may say, well, he didn't break any laws, he's not going to jail, and that's true. So maybe the NBA takes that into consideration, but if I'm the NBA, I've got to come down hard. At some point, when you're making millions of dollars and you're part of a bigger company, a billion-dollar industry, at some point you have to abide by certain rules within that industry. I mean, we just, I guess, can't have chaos. It seems like we do have chaos in this world, but I don't think you can with an industry. You have to have certain guardrails and guidelines, and what Morant did, certainly at least a second time, maybe as many as a fourth or fifth time, seems to go outside the guidelines of reasonable society. So I think they're going to have to suspend him for I don't know, what did he get, 8 games last time?
Yeah.
I mean, 8 times 8, 64. I don't know, but I do know you got to do something here, and it's got to be severe.
Dan, how much does Ja Morant affect winning for the Grizzlies? We know he's a great talent, and he's fun to watch, but when he went away, the winning percentage didn't really go down. And you know this, there are guys who are very good, but when you take them off their team, it doesn't really affect the bottom line that much. Is Ja Morant one of those guys, or is this going to be a killer for the Grizzlies?
Yeah, I call it good enough to get you fired, Chad. I call it like, hey, you know, the AD sees him out there and he goes, man, that guy's getting 25 a night. Look how athletic he is. Look how good he is. Why aren't we winning more games? And, you know, the coach gets fired. Good enough to get you fired is a curse. I thought he was good enough, well, maybe 2-3 years ago, before all of this stuff. I thought he was good enough to really be the focal point of a team that makes a deep run to a final. I did. I thought you put some guys around him as some veterans. You set it up like teams do with LeBron or teams do with other stars, where, you know, what his skill set is, you add to it, you enhance it. But I certainly didn't think that this year. I watched him play, and I think it was a guy that decided he was going to be about the show, not the game, about kind of ancillary things, not winning. And that is not the way you win in the NBA. Whether people like or dislike the NBA, men win in the NBA. There's a process, not the Sixers process. There's a process. You got to lose first. You got to learn how to beat certain teams. You got to keep adding to your team. Even a guy like Michael Jordan complained, disrespected his general manager because he was always whining about wanting more pieces. You know, get me somebody. Okay, they get you Kukos. Okay, they get you a shooter in Paxson or Kerr or Craig Hodges. There's a process you go through when you are, and he's subverted that process because he's not been serious about his craft. Again, you can dislike LeBron James all you want politically or what his stances are, but you can never say that guy cheated the game or cheated his body. Magic, Isaiah, Bird, Jordan, you can name all the greats. You know, Karl Malone was big in college, but he wasn't as big and strong as he is now. Even Anthony Davis is a skinny kid, and sure, he gets hurt a lot, but you've never really heard him do anything other than maybe be hurt, work at his game, get bigger, get stronger. Morant has gone the other way. Morant's all about the crap. You know, I used to say this to players. I go, and it's a metaphor, kinda. Cut your hair, get serious about your game. Like, cut out the garbage stuff, cut out the nonsense, cut out the partying, cut out the, you know, worrying about girls, cut out being the star on campus, and get serious about your game. I always say, man, cut your hair, get serious here. What are you doing here? Get serious about your classes. Get serious about your life. Get serious. I don't think Morant's serious. I think Morant's a child who has, for whatever the reason, decided to go against having what was, at least I think, before money, a fantastic family. Now money, the dad's on the front row. The dad thinks he's one of the guys on the scene. That's never a good thing. And I also heard somebody say this. There's two great quotes I heard, fellas. One, if you can't change your friends, then change your friends. And the other is, John Morant has all the money. John Morant has all the money in the world. He can travel anywhere, and he chooses to go to Instagram Live. Now, God dang, how dumb and childish are you, man?
So, Jason Tatum, he was serious yesterday.
Yeah.
Last week, we were going through our list of sort of the NBA alpha dogs, and I said Jason Tatum is not one of them. I didn't think he was. And he goes out and has a Game 7 NBA record of 51 points, passing Steph Curry's 50 points for their Game 7 against the Kings, and Boston just rolls. What do you think of Tatum in that performance and this Boston team now moving forward, Dan?
Yeah, I think what you said is right. In the NBA, to be one of the guys, you got to do it in the biggest of moments. And I think you're absolutely right. I think Tatum showed in the biggest of moments, Game 7 against Philly. Are you kidding me? In the Garden, and guess what? He goes and gets it done. So, alpha dog, 51 points, most points ever in a Game 7. Heck yeah. And if you don't believe it, then you weren't watching, because the dude had been questioned, and that's what I like about it. He'd been questioned. Game 6, couldn't throw water, or whatever the saying is, couldn't throw a ball in the ocean. I don't know, whatever that saying is. And next thing you know, instead of Philadelphia taking advantage of that, they did not. Embiid did not get the ball in Game 6 in the fourth quarter. Harden did not make the plays necessary to get Embiid the ball. So you lose, and now you put yourself in a situation the Sixers did in Game 7, where if something like Jason Tatum or maybe Jaylen Brown was going to do it happens, you're going to get your brains beat out, and they did. Tatum, to me, I said this on Mike and Mike. I was hosting, and I've been looking for it so I can brag. I could not believe that Jason Tatum wasn't the first pick in that draft. The move up to get Markelle Fultz was the dumbest thing that I have seen in the NBA during my time of being an adult watching the NBA. Markelle Fultz, I swear to God, I covered college basketball, studied it, and I'm like, who? That guy that I saw late night a few times, you're going to take him over a great dude in Jason Tatum. I know a lot of people, and I recruited St. Louis a lot, that said this dude is a real dude. He's a really good guy. I was happy for him. I'm always happy for him. I think he's a good dude. Good for him. Good for the Celtics. Basketball's better when the Celtics and Lakers are good, and I'm having fun watching.
Meanwhile, Embiid and Harden, Embiid's pointed to, hey, we can't do it on our own. I looked at the numbers. I'm thinking the team can't win unless you guys step up too. Harden is awful in this Game 7 performance, so much so that, you know, he's asked about his relationship with Doc Rivers. He's saying, oh, it's okay. I mean, this is an example of a guy that can go off for 50 points in one game and turn around and be a no-show the next, and proving a point that in Oklahoma City as a number 2 or number 3, it's a bit different whenever he's paired with the MVP in Philadelphia and expectations are higher and you have nothing to show for it.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, you can sit there. You know, if you go get 40 and Harden gets 30 in Game 7 and you lose, and somebody might take what you're saying about we can't do it ourselves seriously. But when you go for 9 and you're Harden, and you go for 15 and 8 when you're the supposed MVP, no one's going to take you serious. And Tyrese Maxey, over the course of his time there, was pretty good. So, look, if you are, and this is more so maybe than any other league, if you are the guy, $35.5 million is what Harden's made. All right, you got a Game 7. Well, guess what? You got a show. Look, the numbers in basketball are very clear. It's like baseball, really. The numbers are right there. Football, you can get away with certain things. You know, you have one big run, whatever. But in basketball, your numbers are there, right there. And look, you can play a great floor game, but that's for P.J. Tucker. You know, I mean, that's not for the guy making $35 million and the MVP. You got to play a great game. That's what you saw out of Magic Johnson. Look, in the NBA, I always go back to the greats. The greats never got distracted. The greats always improved their game. Yeah, the greats can play. Magic got his coach fired. Jordan was always complaining, disrespecting Jerry Krause. But they always were first. They were always the guy. Hey, look, Isaiah gets 28 and a quarter on a bad leg. We know what guy, Jordan gets 61 or whatever it was against the Celtics as a rookie. They've always showed up. And if you're not going to show up in a Game 7, then I don't want to hear from you. I don't think anybody wants to hear from you. Seriously, I mean, who the hell cares what Joel Embiid says when he goes for 15 and 8? Or who cares 3 for 11 performance out of James Harden? You're right. It's a big difference going from number 2 or number 3 on that scouting report to number 1, and everybody in that NBA, on those NBA staffs, they got some smart people. They got some real technology to figure out every little crack, every little thing that you don't do really well, they figure out, and they try to exploit it, and you got to adjust, and neither one of those guys did. In fact, I would argue both choked.
Mm-hmm. What an opportunity for Nikola Jokic to not choke in this series and go against, as you call it, Dan, 2 grown men. You got to go through grown men to win in the NBA, and that's LeBron James and Anthony Davis are. What do you think about what this could mean for Jokic in this series against LeBron and the Lakers if he shows up big and they're able to get to Denver's first ever NBA Finals?
Hey, I see the guys. I see Wilbon and Smith and Rose on TV talking about their brother. Right? You know, be an African-American dude, and they'll say, well, my brother. Well, let me tell you something. Nikola Jokic, you're my brother, baby, my Serbian brother. That's right. I'm going straight out freaking bias. It would be huge. It's against LeBron, and even more, it's going to be tough because I'll tell you this. We can make fun of Anthony Davis all you want, but when that dude gets in a stance and he spreads those arms out and moves his feet, he moves like a damn guard, and Jokic is going to have his hands full. Now, having said that, can Anthony Davis, because how unorthodox Jokic is, can Anthony Davis handle the physicality? Because Jokic doesn't shoot fadeaways. Jokic shoots those shots where his left elbow goes right through the chin of the defender, protecting against the right hand, which has the basketball. He leads with a hip. He leads with a shoulder. He leads with an elbow. Sometimes he leads with a big fat Serbian head, which I can heads are strong. We have strong craniums. So I'm looking forward to this. I want Jokic to kick the living crap out of everybody. I do think this, though. I don't care what people say. In my mind, it's it's Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But if LeBron James can lead a team at 38 years old that started out 2-10, restructured itself at the trade deadline to a championship, I think it'd be his 5th. Man, you got to start. I would anyway. Maybe not you. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm putting him, I hate to say it, I'm putting him with the greats that I've seen, which is Kareem and Michael.
Dan Dockich, one of the greats on the OutKick Network. Final thing for you, Dan, final couple minutes. You told us last week you didn't think Bob Huggins was going to get fired, and he didn't. What do you make of the decision by West Virginia, and what message does it send to the rest of any business when a podcaster is getting fired for playing Huggins' comments and Huggins isn't getting fired for making them?
Yeah, that podcaster, Josh Neighbors, a friend of mine. He was a producer when I worked at Sirius XM, and it's a great guy. It's the world that we live in. I mean, you guys know. I mean, hell, coaches, you win enough, you become an icon in your state, you become the guy, you become whatever. You can do whatever you want. And frankly, Huggins hadn't won that much. In fact, I would argue before he had a little bit of success here in the portal, there were some rumblings about getting him out. He's never won a conference title at in a major conference. He won Conference USA titles, but ever since he's been in the Big 12 or he's been in the, whatever they're in, Big 8, SEC, whatever, he hadn't won nothing. Zero, nothing. His best is like third. Yeah, he had a tournament run in 2010. There were rumblings they were wanting him out, but now he had a pretty good portal, got a bunch of guys to come, and West Virginia does what West Virginia does. West Virginia don't care. I mean, look, that place is awful. He's the highest paid public employee who goes on a national show, and in fact, guy Bob Herzl, who wrote a scathing, or at least he thinks it's a scathing article about me, included that he thinks Bill Cunningham and the other guest, Steve Moeller, kind of baited him into being homophobic.
Give me a break.
I mean, geez, I mean, honest to God, what the hell are we doing here? But that's West Virginia. That small town writer with needing the access of the big, bad Hall of Fame basketball coach. I've said forever, he doesn't deserve in any Hall of Fame. If you can't win at least a conference title in a major conference, I'm not putting you in the Hall of Fame. He is. The writers, the athletic director who's brand new, the president, Gordon Gee, who was through all kind of scandals at Ohio State, they wimped out, they backed out, they did what they do, which is acquiesce to the big and powerful, mean, fat, drunk coach.
Dan Dockich, don't at him. Don't at me with Dan Dockich.
Don't
mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern.
Don't even think about adding.
Catch him tomorrow morning right here on the YouTube
Don't
channel.
at me.
Dan, appreciate you as always, man. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too, guys. Thanks.
Thanks,
See ya.
Dan.
Good luck with that cleanse.
Yeah, cleanse, the fasting, the intermittent fasting, different from a cleanse. When I heard
not a
cleanse,
cleanse. I'm
I think
thinking
it's some sort of
straight liquid.
like pepper liquid that he's putting in his system to
colonoscopy.
get rid of everything.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, but maybe it feels the same for Dan after a hard weekend. Who knows?
I would have a real hard time not eating anything for 36 hours.
Yes.
That'd be very difficult for me.
Coming up, Brittany Griner does an about face in regards to the national anthem. It hits different now. Details next on Hot Mic. Brady recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right
it?
next to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
oh, definitely Madden.
Man, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and and I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been in the Super Bowl, won the MVP. He's like, now because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news, shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow with you for Hot Mic across the OutKick network. Brittany Griner, she spent, nearly 10 months in a Russian prison. All over a cannabis-filled vape dispenser or container that she was caught with at the airport. And punishment absolutely did not fit the crime. She pleaded guilty and sat there awaiting the ability to come back to the States. Now she's standing and emotional for the national anthem. This coming a couple of years after she said in 2020 she wasn't even going to come back out onto the court for the anthem in regards to the Black Lives Matter protests, that she didn't think it should be played prior to games and for the WNBA events. Now she's taking a different tune and singing a different tune and a different tone to her answer based on the fact of what she went through. And I'm reading this going, I bet, because while nothing's perfect anywhere, this is the greatest country on the planet. And while there's plenty of things to improve upon, you realize real quick in situations like that you got it pretty good. In fact, the best in the U.S.
Well, certainly better than Russia is what she found out with human rights there, and your rights as not just she's not a citizen, but as someone traveling into the country, she found out the hard way. Biggest surprise about this story is that in that photo of Brittany Griner standing for the anthem, there are actual fans behind her seated, ready to watch a WNBA preseason game. That's what shocked me more than anything else. I don't know why people go to preseason games in any league, but to see people there for a WNBA preseason game absolutely shocked me when I saw that more than anything else. It's no surprise that Brittany Griner has a new outlook and perspective on life after going through what she went through in Russia. So it's understandable that she has a newfound respect for the anthem.
But you know what? Ever since she's returned, I think the questions that have been asked and the stories that have been written, from what I can tell, she is very contrite. And, I mean, in regards to her way of thinking about the country and her rights. Instead of thinking, I think many people would have thought, oh, she's going to come back whenever it actually happens, and she's going to be pissed off for greatness at the fact that it took so long. When in fact it was, hey, I hope they are going back for other Americans that are unjustly behind bars, regardless of circumstance. And everything that I've seen has been right on point with what I would expect her to be saying personally, based on having gone through that.
I like almost everything she said about, her experience and what that's taught her and how thankful she was for those that helped get her back to the United States. Now, if we can only apply that level of logic and experience to her believing that biological men should not compete against biological women in sports. Because, and look, maybe she was put on the spot by a reporter and gave an answer that she regrets, but that's one that I wish would go away.
But she's also living in a country where if you want to identify as another gender, have at it. But the competition behind it is what our conversation has been about. And yes.
And that's what she was asked about and gave the wrong answer.
Wrong parking spot for rookie Christian Braun, Kansas, I believe, right? That's where he played. Playing for the Denver Nuggets, and Stan Kroenke is the owner of the Nuggets. Apparently on a day where right after he's drafted, no one's there at the facility. At least that's Braun's side of the story. He pulls up and parks in not one but 3 parking spots assigned to team ownership. So you can imagine how he's parked in every single one of those, and says he goes in for 15, 20 minutes to grab some stuff and comes back out, goes back into the locker room the next day or the next time he's there, and he has a $15,000 fine waiting at his locker. $5,000 per day for parking in the owner's spot. He ends up getting, by the way, fined $2,500 total.
Well, he should understand there's cameras there that caught him. Is this extreme? Yes. Do I also believe that this is not the first thing with Christian Braun? Let me give you a quick example. I sent this quote to you guys last week. That story about Nikola Jokic interrupting his press conference where he was going into too much detail about how they were defending someone. in the playoffs, and he just quietly, hey, okay, I got this from here, and broke in and got the kid out of there when he was doing an interview, I put 2 and 2 together and think, not that he's a bad guy or anything,
I know.
but maybe he's done some dumb rookie stuff, and this is one of those lessons they're trying to teach him because he did this 3 different times.
Excessive, yes.
Needed? Maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe. And I don't think it's just the parking in the owner's spot is what I'm saying. That was another illustration of maybe the rookie needed to be taught a bit of a lesson.
Parking in all 3 spots, though, at the same time.
That would be a $50,000 fine.
That's what he did. It was 15. 5,000 per spot.
Good for him.
FSU, they want extra money, more than 50 grand. They want more of the revenue pie in the ACC. Details next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here for the Monday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. If you're watching us, we say thank you. Hit that subscription button to the channel as well on OutKick.
Good crowd on YouTube today also. Smash the like button. Smash that thumbs up if you're on YouTube right now.
A lot of interaction with MORANT in our discussion. We'll get back into that coming up for sure. You can hit us up on social at OutKick as well. Coming up, Brett McMurphy will join us in 20 minutes, ACC meetings and the report that he had last week on Oregon and Washington. They've already been vetted and cleared, was the report, quote unquote, cleared by the Big Ten to join whenever that time comes. We'll try to get a clearer understanding of how soon the Big Ten would like that to happen. And I'm really curious about this, Chad, through Brett. Was this done before or after the new commissioner took over?
Good question.
With the Big Ten. Because this would, I mean, it makes sense. You just have the presidents and the meetings going on. We haven't had those big meetings yet within the conference, other than for them to confirm the new hire.
Crazy right now, of all the conference drama and all the big stories to talk about with Brett, SEC may be in last place in terms of drama with what's going on, with the exception of Alabama baseball.
Alabama baseball, and then Georgia getting a massive #1 overall consensus recruit.
But I'm talking about the business of conference stuff, not just individual teams. We got plenty to get. We don't need to get into any individual recruiting or any individual program. There's plenty of meat on the bone with Pac-12, ACC, Big Ten.
Josh Neighbors was the host of the Locked On Big 12 podcast through the Locked On Network. And I say was because he says he was let go for playing the Bob Huggins audio, which was aired on WLW 700, the Bill Cunningham show last week, where Bob Huggins used the homophobic slur not once but twice, mentioned Catholics in there too. Within, a day and a half, Chad, West Virginia said, here's the penalties. He's not fired.
I mean, I think it was about 24 hours later they released all of it.
$1 million in reduction by salary, which means he's still making over $3 per year. Year-to-year contract. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, okay, year-to-year contract, he's 68, 69 years old.
Yeah.
So if they want to get out of the deal, maybe it's easier now. But ultimately, if you're not firing him for this.
Well, I'm sure he doesn't want to go out like this. So he's probably got 2 more years left to coach, right? You talked about the year-to-year deal. That doesn't affect him at all. I think he just wants to coach for 2-3 more years and be done, would be my guess, and not have this be the last thing. It looked like
window dressing on what they announced, honestly. Not the case with the Locked On Network, who got rid of Josh Neighbors for airing the Huggins audio unedited, to which he said, hey, I aired it as it was for everyone to hear for themselves instead of bleeping out stuff. We did the opposite of that a week ago. And look, it's the Locked On Network that's being reported. Locked On Network is under the Tegna company, who sold for $5.4 billion. They also own and run Intercom and other media outlets. They have multiple sponsors, including investors, one of them being one of the head guys, one of the executives at Disney. So, I mean, in terms of optics, and that's what they told Neighbors in this case, hey, you can't do that. It doesn't matter if it came from Huggins. If Huggins said it or if you're re-airing it, it's through your program. But I do find the irony here that the host of a podcast on the Locked On Big 12 show can play the audio of a basketball coach at West Virginia saying this on a radio station in Cincinnati, speaking directly about Xavier, and he's the one that takes the fall for playing the audio that the coach is on the air saying, and now he's a year-to-year employee of the university as the head coach. Meanwhile, Josh Neighbors is starting another podcast.
Well, it's a perfect
It's an example of
It's
where we are.
It's a perfect example of where we are in society
Tom
and media
Brenneman.
and everything else right now. The double standard, which we all know exists. You know, what does it Clay always say when he joins us? As long as your talent exceeds your problems, then you're going to have a job and be fine. And Bob Huggins is a guy that as a coach, he's seen as his talents exceed whatever problems he has, so he's not getting fired. Meanwhile, some lowly podcaster gets the axe for playing the homophobic slurs that were said by the coach whose talent exceeded his problems. But apparently this is the Locked On Network and their parent company saying this podcaster's talent did not exceed his problems. It's not fair. It's not right. It's pretty stupid. I'd also like to ask, how did he get the unedited audio? That's fascinating to me because the only bit of audio was posted by that local meteorologist or person on the news station, and it was already edited when I heard that. So I wonder how he got the original audio to play.
I don't believe
now,
it was edited.
Can we argue that he should have checked with someone before playing it?
We edited on our end last week.
Oh, it wasn't edited?
Colin Warner edited the audio.
Colin went in
us.
and edited? Oh, good job. All right. I thought the one I saw online on social media was edited. So someone else edited it.
Not edited. But you can go and any fan, I say fan, any user of Twitter or any other social media outlet could have retweeted this, posted this. I mean, we found it through social, right?
Well, no, look, good job by Colin on that. The difference is he put it out on a podcast network that has sponsors, and he got fired for it. So he should have asked the question. He should have known to ask.
Yeah, that's their policy.
But is that a fireable offense? I don't think so. It should have been deleted, taken down, and he gets talked, hey, don't ever do that again. If you're going to post something like that, you better let us know beforehand because that's not allowed instead of getting the axe.
I still have not heard what happened to the hosts. You and I have talked about this. The hosts that are now being almost used as they are being used as the excuse as to why Bob Huggins said what he said. He was led into it. And I think it's the same coach who had Tom Brenneman come speak to his team 6 months after Brenneman was let go by companies.
Yeah, that West Virginia columnist who argued in his hit piece on Dan Dockich that one could argue that the host led him into saying this, like they knew this is exactly what he's going to say. Come on.
FSU wants to cash in big, and their athletic director is doubling down on it. This isn't just a report saying that Clemson and Florida State want more. Florida State AD Michael Offord says he has zero interest in keeping things equal in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Quote, I make no bones about it that we're the top brand in the conference. And when you look at how they measure media contracts with households, viewership, and championships, we're driving that viewership for our conference at a high rate. And this was through the On3 Sports Network. The website is War Chant, I believe. And then he adds, there are a couple of schools that are really driving that media contract. And he's right. And this is where the fight begins. Because at the very top of college sports, the haves and the have-nots. And right now it's the Big Ten and the SEC, and everyone else is fighting for that piece of the pie. But the ACC is caught in this grant of rights deal until the mid-2030s. Like 2034, I believe, is where their grant of rights deal expires. And right now each school is getting around roughly, $35 million, $36 million per season as a part of this grant of rights deal, which is fine. But it's not up there with what the SEC is getting now from ESPN, ABC, and Disney, and it is nowhere close to the $100 million per year that the Big Ten's handing out to each of their member schools because of the TV deal that Kevin Warren negotiated. Point being, the big brands, the ACC's got to figure out a way here in these meetings that are going on. How do we make things right, but make everyone a part of our plan? Because both sides here, how often, Chad, have we heard the argument of, oh, Vanderbilt, you don't care about athletics? Get out of here.
Go to the Ivy League.
But they're a part of the SEC. Just like any of the other member institutions that we wouldn't immediately point to as the big brands of college athletics in the ACC would be saying the same thing. Wake Forest and Florida State, they're getting the same check per year from ESPN with their grant of rights deal.
2036, by the way, is when that
2036.
grant of rights deal is finally up. So even 2 years past where you said, which is a long way away.
So, yeah.
There are 5 schools in the ACC that have true value. This is what's believed with the rest of college football, that they have the value to leave. The ones you mentioned, Florida State, Clemson, also Virginia, North Carolina, Miami. So this is going to be, we're going to get into it with Brett McMurphy coming up, but a very delicate balance of every other member institution in the ACC is going to want to keep things equal and not go away from that. But there's going to come a time where they get a legitimate offer to leave for the Big Ten or the SEC, and they have to decide if we want to keep this thing together and remain a conference that can compete and give these schools what they want, which is more money and we make less at the bottom end of it, or you let them leave and it disbands. And then suddenly you're not a Power 5 conference anymore. That decision may be coming sooner rather than later for the ACC.
And Jim Phillips stayed on as commissioner for another 3 years.
And he's highly thought of.
Absolutely. And he's been in the seat where both programs, and I'm using Wake Forest as the example, but to me they're a good equivalent here. He's been in the seat of athletic director to where he knows the back and forth and the give and take, and everyone rises and you fall together, right? But in this case, Florida State's saying, hey, Alfred's saying there's a $30 million gap next year between us and the SEC per season, per institution, per program.
And it also sounds crazy because, well, you're not in the SEC. You're in the ACC, and we're not as valuable. So you're going to have to deal with that. But isn't it also, it sounds counterintuitive to say, yeah, you're right, FSU. The rest of us at the bottom, we can't compete, so we'll gladly take these scraps, and we'll give you a higher percentage so you can go compete with the SEC. That doesn't make any sense for the ACC other than survival.
Right.
If it means that or Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia, they all bolt, Clemson bolts for another conference, then they've got to make that decision. And the rest of the conference will just be peons. They're the lower class.
And with the type of money.
And their own conference would be admitting it at that point.
Right.
Which is a tough spot to be in.
And a tough.
If it's about fairness and equity and fair play and competition and everything else.
That's not going to happen.
You're going to tell me that you are stating that these 5 schools are more important. I remember years ago, there was an officiating gaffe in a game, a huge one, and as punishment, the NFL sent that crew away from a big nationally televised game to Nashville for the Titans-Dolphins game. And we crushed it, saying, this is the league stating you aren't important.
That was the punishment.
Your punishment is to go to a Titans-Dolphins game instead of this other one. And we talked about the dangerous precedent that sets. Now imagine the ACC coming out and saying, guys, we can't afford to lose these programs. You're going to have to take less and give them more for them to stay. Or we are disbanded. We are no longer a conference if they leave. That's a tough spot.
There is a new NIL bill in Missouri that's going to pass. And it is going to have a ripple effect with other states. Buckle up with this, because the bill says a few things for the state of Missouri. Coaches and school officials are allowed to attend meetings between the student athlete and then third parties where NIL compensation is being discussed. So school officials and coaches are allowed to attend those meetings. Conferences and the NCAA shall not punish a school as a result of an athlete receiving NIL money, investigate a school for its engagement in NIL activity, penalize a school when a, quote, institutional marketing associate, end quote, pays an athlete for his or her NIL. And the law says, quote, shall not be construed to qualify a student athlete as an employee of a post-secondary institution. That's how it reads for the collegiate level. And then there's the high school level, where Missouri's new NIL law, HB 417, allows high school recruits in the state of Missouri, in-state recruits, to enter into name, image, likeness deals and profit from endorsement money, but only after they sign with their in-state college or university. So if you're staying in state and you can receive NIL in high school, have at it, according to this new law in the state of Missouri. They cannot profit from endorsement money in high school if they're signing out of state to play athletics. And previously, high school athletes were not allowed, period, to engage in NIL in any way, or you lost eligibility. Now they're saying, oh, you can do this if you're staying in state, which means, name a college, we can use Missouri as the example. If you want an in-state recruit and you want to get them paid now and they're a junior, go ahead and sign up. Let's go.
Missouri should never lose another top-notch in-state recruit ever again if this goes through. If they are doing what they should be doing based off this law, you're going in, and granted, you're going to swing and miss sometimes on guys who don't develop the way you think, but go into the freshman class or sophomore class and look at any 4 or 5-star player from your state and go ahead and get them an NIL deal if they commit to your school. Now, what other states follow this lead? And Missouri's an interesting case because they are the biggest game in town in the state of Missouri. So this is very clearly Missouri Tiger fans that are in the state legislature that are putting this through to benefit Missouri. Other states where this could happen, where there's one big program in the state, where everyone could get together and say, let's draw out some legislation that will help our program. Arkansas comes to mind. Nebraska comes to mind. LSU in Louisiana comes to mind. There is clear biggest game in town implications for those states. If they had similar legislation, imagine what LSU could do in the state of Louisiana.
Think about Georgia.
With NIL. Georgia, yes, and Georgia is the biggest game, but I'm thinking of those states where there is one lone. There are going to be Georgia Tech, fans, and there's other big schools in the state of Georgia, but in the state of Arkansas, everyone's a Razorbacks fan. In the state of Nebraska, everyone's a Nebraska fan. In the state of Missouri, I don't know that everyone's a Missouri fan, but that is the biggest game in town in terms of college football, especially in that state.
Massive.
Huge implications.
And it's written in law that the NCAA can't punish or do anything about it.
Which
if
is
the
crazy
schools are
to me.
involved with NIL and they're in this meeting and help facilitating
Which, to
it.
me, the NCAA, no, they don't have the power they once had, but couldn't the NCAA just come back and say, there's no law that says you have to be in our organization. If you have a state law that trumps our rules, we will just kick you out. You're no longer an NCAA school. If you're not going to play by the same rules everyone else does because your state says you can't play by those rules, then GTFO.
Well,
you're out of the NCAA.
You've got a situation where a new president was brought in because of his ties into the political realm, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of those. This is the focus now.
Well, again, I'm not saying the NCAA should do that, but that's just odd to me that a state law would also say.
We're so upset with Georgia that we're going to punish you, Missouri. Get out.
Not only is this our law with NIL and NCAA schools in the state, but the NCAA, which is not based in Missouri, cannot do anything to any of you. Which the NCAA, it's not a legal American citizen right to be a member of the NCAA. They could just say, bye, you've broken your charter. We can't even punish you if you break the rules, so you're no longer in the NCAA. They could do that. They shouldn't, because we're going to wait to see where all this legislation goes and see where the dust settles and come up with some new rules.
And
but
the key is
they could.
They're not going to penalize the school. They're saying they can't legally when an institutional marketing associate pays an athlete for his or her NIL. We could dive further into this for sure. I mean, there's plenty of things to unpack. You better believe Texas and Texas A&M are unpacking it across that state in legislation. Coming up, Brett McMurphy joins us from the Action Network, college football insider, the Oregon Ducks, the Washington Huskies, and the Big Ten. Vetted and cleared. What does that mean for the timetable of the Pac-12? That's next on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you. crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Always great to have Brett McMurphy join the show, Action Network. He's the college football insider. You can follow him on social at Brett_McMurphy. He's coming to us, I believe it's Amelia Island is where the ACC spring meetings take place, and he joins us with a great backdrop. If it's not at Amelia Island, it's at a beautiful location. Brett, great to have you on, man. Hope things are well.
Yeah, this is actually my house here. Yeah. No, yeah, in Amelia Island again for the ACC spring meetings, one of the top spots on the spring meeting tour circuit. So enjoying it here as always.
Brett McMurphy with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. The ACC, Chad and I were just discussing, it's all about right now discussing the money and how to divide it, maybe not equally. How is that discussion going based on people you're talking with, boots on the ground there?
Well, literally the meeting started about an hour and 20 minutes ago. And as far as the schedule for the meeting, one athletic director amazingly said to me, we're only setting aside 45 minutes to talk about revenue. So that's obviously a big issue. Look, guys, they can talk about it. They can make changes. They can have unequal revenue sharing. But, I kind of mentioned this to a couple of folks here, and they agreed. It's putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It may help for a little bit, but it's not going to solve the problem. If you give the brands in the ACC that are worth more money, 2, 3, 4, 5 million more, whatever that number is, hey, that's great. They'll take it. The bottom line is if they have a conference that comes along that's willing to double what they're making now, they're still going to leave. So we'll have to see what happens. The ACC knows the position they're in. They're tied together, locked together till 2036, unless somebody can find a way to climb over that wall and get out of the grant of rights. Some people think that may happen in the next couple of years or so. We'll have to see. All I know is that, a lot of athletic directors and conference people have been a lot more vocal on this than they have in the past. And I think that's happened because you look at the huge deals that the Big Ten got and that the SEC has gotten, and the distance between, forget about the Power Five, it's the Power Two and everybody else right now. Everybody just doesn't want to get left behind by the Power Two, and they're doing whatever they can to get close to those numbers of the SEC and the Big Ten. If you can't beat them, join them, and that's certainly what some ACC schools would hope for.
Yeah, and you talked about that, shotgun wound for the ACC, and it being the fact that the moment one of the two big boys comes calling, they're going to lose some of their better member institutions at that point. We're going to get into reporting on the Pac-12 schools, the two of those that could be on the move at some point. But do you get any indication, Brett, that the Big Ten or the SEC is in any type of hurry to try to find a way to break that grant of rights to get one of those ACC programs into their conference sooner rather than later?
No, and I want to make this clear, and this is kind of a misperception of people. The SEC or the Big Ten are not recruiting teams to come to their league. How it happens is actually the reverse. The teams go to those leagues and say, we want to apply for membership for your league. And then if those conferences have an interest in those schools, then they would offer them an invitation. So it's not the other way around. So I want to make it clear. People may think the Big Ten and SEC are courting these other schools. Not true. But certainly schools that want to get out, they will approach these conferences to see if there's any interest in getting into their league, because you're certainly not going to, you guys aren't going to leave a job. Hopefully you're not. You're not going to leave OutKick unless you've got another job lined up. And so that's kind of how it is with these schools. They're not going to leave a conference unless they are already have another home that's guaranteed. And that's kind of similar to what, I'd mentioned last week in an interview regarding the Big Ten and Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington has been vetted and approved to join the Big Ten if the Big Ten wants to add them. That's a big if. But if they want to, they've cleared all of the necessary requirements, financial, academic, all the minutia that goes into that to be added to the Big Ten. The Big Ten, make no mistakes, not going to add another school unless it's going to increase the value for all of their current members. So as far as the ACC schools, certainly if some of those schools, one or two of these schools, would challenge the grant of rights and could get out of the grant of rights, which obviously lawyers are going to make a ton of money, surprise, surprise, then they would certainly be very attractive to the Big Ten or the SEC.
So looking at it that way, with schools courting the two big conferences and not the other way around, how into the Big Ten is Washington and Oregon right now? Are they fully committed to it's not going to work to any great level in the Pac-12 and they want to leave, or is this more of sort of a wait and see right now, Brett, with what's going on with whatever happens with the Pac-12 media deal?
Well, the Big Ten obviously knows the interest of Washington and Oregon. And at the end of the day, would I think Washington and Oregon would prefer to stay in the Pac-12? Yeah, I think so. But here's a big but. You're going to be making at least half as much less than if you go to the Big Ten. And also the current Pac-12 you're in now is not the Pac-12 you signed up for. There's no USC, there's no UCLA. You know, they may add San Diego State, they may add SMU. Whoever they add, that's not the Pac-12 that Oregon and Washington signed up for. So are you going to stay there and make, you know, anywhere from, I don't know, let's say $25 to $40 million? We don't know what their deal is going to be. I don't have any idea what the number is going to be. Anybody that says they do is lying, because the Pac-12 schools don't know. But the Big 12 got about $32 million. So it's going to be, you would assume, around that number. It's not going to be anywhere near the money that the Big Ten gets. So if Oregon and Washington have an invitation to go to the Big Ten, it's not when, it's not if they accept it, it's when they accept it. There's no decision to be made. If Washington and Oregon get the invitation, they're gone. They're going to double, maybe triple the amount of money. They are, extend, 2 other stops or outposts, if you will, on the West Coast, joining USC and UCLA. So it's not like they have a decision to make. You've asked the girl out to the prom and you're waiting and waiting and waiting for her to say yes. That's the situation Oregon and Washington are in right now.
Brett McMurphy with us. Action Sports Network is where you can find him with the college football reporting nationally. Brett, so a couple of follow-ups on that, because Chad and I have discussed, do you know, and I'm sure you do, and maybe it doesn't matter for the conference for the Big Ten, but did the vetting and the clearance of both Oregon and Washington take place with Kevin Warren? Did it take place during the purgatory search, or did it take place with Tony Patetti coming in and taking over the Big Ten?
It happened. So I had reported previously that Oregon officials, their general counsel, or their lawyers, met with their counterparts with the Big Ten back in August. And Washington also had a separate meeting with the Big Ten, one meeting in Chicago, one meeting in New York. That happened in August. The vetting and approval occurred sometime after that. I don't have a specific date or timeline, but it was when Kevin Warren was the commissioner. So, does that mean things have changed? No, they were approved, if you will, to make that move, again, if it financially makes sense for all the other members. So they are at that point. Does that mean they're going to add them? No, there's no guarantee they're going to, but it means they've cleared whatever financial, academic, and other hurdles to be to this point, that if the Big Ten decides that they want to go beyond 16 and it makes financial sense, these two guys have met all the criteria, then we would take them in.
Yeah, and USC, UCLA, of course, they're headed to the Big Ten. Other hurdles, could those include, well, we want Oregon but not Oregon State, and they've got to figure out like the state institution policy there, or is there more to it than that? We were having a discussion last Friday. If you're bringing in USC, UCLA, why not bring in Oregon and Washington?
Well, at that time, Fox, the discussions with Fox were for a 16-team conference, and the worth of the value of the conference, adding USC and UCLA, was worth X amount, and that got them to their current deal. So at that time, Kevin Warren was, obviously Notre Dame's the golden goose. Any conference will take them immediately. Doesn't matter what conference it is. They'll do it, yesterday. So with Oregon and Washington, it was, let's get USC and UCLA in here and figure things out. And then in the process, the thinking was, okay, if we want to go beyond these 16, where are we looking? Again, the ACC schools contractually are locked up till 2036. That's not the case with the Pac-12. The Pac-12 media rights deal ends in 2023 after this season. Those schools can get out. There's no penalty. The deal's up in 2023. That's why they look to the Pac-12 for the remaining schools in the Pac-12. Oregon and Washington, checked off all the boxes required if the Big Ten decided to add them. And as far as Oregon State going with Oregon or Washington State going with Washington, I'm sure politicians would try to stop that. I'm an Oklahoma State grad. Oklahoma State, people probably wondered why Oklahoma State didn't go to the SEC with Oklahoma. Well, it's very simple. The SEC wanted Oklahoma and Texas. They didn't want Oklahoma State. The Big Ten wants Oregon or Washington. Financially, if it makes sense, they don't want Oregon State and Washington State. So it will not be a package deal.
When you look around right now with all the issues facing college sports, the latest story with Alabama and the baseball betting scandal that's now gone into Iowa also, where does that rank with conferences and with the NCAA and school presidents on the list of we have to figure this out and get a handle on it? Is it on down the list, Brett, or is it close to the top of the list?
I certainly don't think anyone's ignoring it, but I think they've got a lot of other pressing issues, figuring out NIL, media rights deals, the pending lawsuits, players getting compensated, are they going to revenue share with the play, all these different myriad of things. I mean, it is serious, but again, keep in mind, if there wasn't legalized gambling, these incidents may have never been reported. They may have never been uncovered, but because there is legalized gambling, they're able to track this stuff, to identify this stuff, and then notify the schools and or the conferences, hey, there's some weird stuff going on with this random baseball game that everybody and their dog is laying the lumber with one specific team. You should check into that. And so, it's obviously anytime, especially coaches and or players, are involved in this, it's kind of a new thing since it legalized gambling in other sports other than Nevada has just happened. Certainly it is, it is a priority, but it's a little bit further down the line than, the immediacy of the NIL and other stuff you've seen in the headlines recently.
Well, speaking of NIL, we just had the discussion about what the state of Missouri is doing with their new NIL legislation. And part of it is that it would make it where the NCAA could not do anything to a state of Missouri school in regards to NIL. And I read that, Brett, and I kind of laughed like you are, and I'm thinking, well, couldn't the NCAA just said, well, you're no longer in the NCAA because we can't rule on you, you can't be judged, you can't play under the same rules as every other state if you're putting it in your state legislation that we can't rule on certain things?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's so I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I don't know what the solution is, and good luck to whoever figures it out, because you've got all of these different conferences doing different things. You have different schools doing different things. Like you mentioned, Missouri, you have different states, trying to put in additional laws. The NCAA could do that. And then, Missouri, not specifically Missouri, but conferences could say, okay, well, you know what? If you're going to put in these rules, we just won't be in the NCAA anymore. And the SEC and the Big Ten, if they want to, they have that power. They have that ability to break off from the NCAA, create their own rules, create what you can and can't do, and operate independently of the NCAA. And don't think for a second that they couldn't. And by the way, they could still add other schools if they wanted to get as big as they wanted going forward. So, yeah, I've heard about the Missouri stuff. I know other states have done other things. It's just, I like to joke, it's like the Wild Wild West, except I don't want to insult the Wild Wild West. But it's like you've built the NIL is you've built a highway and said basically you can drive as fast as you want on this highway. And then one day there's a speed limit sign that says 25 miles per hour. And oh, by the way, there's nobody to make sure that you don't exceed 25 miles per hour. That's kind of the NIL situation right now. I don't see the solution to it. I don't think it's going to be very soon. But yeah, I guess it's fascinating to keep track of it every day, but makes my my head spin, to be honest.
Brett, the last 2 years, July 4th weekend, there has been major conference realignment news. As we sit here in the middle of May, do you believe we will have major conference realignment news for a third consecutive year on July 4th weekend?
I don't think so. You know, we'll have to say. I mean, that came out of nowhere. I mean, I've got my Pebble Beach shirt here. I was enjoying Pebble Beach for the first time in my life last year on July 1st, I think it was, when the news broke about USC and UCLA, which ruined my round on the lovely Hay par 3 course. But fortunately, I got to play it again. Yeah, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, it could have happened, absolutely, but I'm not going to predict and say, yeah, for a third consecutive year, something's going to happen. I do think, you know, that some schools and conferences have some hard decisions to make in the next year or two. Will those happen over the July 4th weekend? I would doubt it, but anything is, as I've learned, anything is possible in college athletics. But I do think in the next couple of years, we'll see some really hard decisions made and maybe some movement within schools or conferences within the next 2 years.
Hey, man, we always cite your reporting. I know you're
the one. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're always doing that. We love having you on when we have the chance to chat. We appreciate you taking some time out of the day, especially with the backdrop there, and enjoy the tour of all the spring meetings.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
Brett.
Brett McMurphy. Action
Looks
Network
computer
there.
generated behind him. It looks so nice.
So perfect, yeah. There at his home.
Yes.
Amelia Island. ACC meetings going on there for his coverage. Coming up, Chad, so there's a big time, speaking of NIL, Hunter Dickinson taking the money, going to Kansas, and saying it took courage to do that, taking more money to leave Michigan. It took courage. We discussed
We're
when
going
we
to
return.
enter the mind of Hunter Dickinson when we come back and try to figure out what's going on in that web of his, that his mind is weaving with these words.
That is next on Hot Mic. Recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He's a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like, now because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working the morning news. Shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro, what do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
6th and Peabody, our location daily for the OutKick studios. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button as well. You can join us in the chat. Chad's been complimenting the activity today. Back and forth.
We just had someone respond and say they're watching from the Philippines. So I said, hello, Manila. That's my response. My father spent some time in the Philippines.
Hello, Lawrence.
In the Navy.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Eventful time.
Hello, Lawrence, Kansas, for Hunter Dickinson. Goes from Michigan, where he's a star, he's the captain, he's the guy, and ends up accepting the NIL pitch at Kansas as a graduate where he can play immediately.
He says, it's a long quote, but essentially that took some courage.
Yeah, he said
right?
it took courage to leave Michigan to take the money. Here's Hunter Dickinson.
At some capacity, you have to be selfish about your future, and that's what Hunter is. I mean, you can rat on him all you want. You can hate him for what he did. He's being selfish for his future, and who the hell is not in their own job or profession? Who the hell is not?
Thank you.
College athletes are the only people that get caught up in being deemed selfish. When coaches are doing it left and right, there's no reason why players should not be allowed to do what Hunter did. I think he's opened the gate for a lot of possibilities and hopefully continued to allow further protections for athletes in the future.
Bro, Jordan, the people hating on me would leave their job right now for a $10,000 increase.
Yeah. 10,000. That's just 10,000.
At Michigan, I got less than 600,000, or less than six figures. My bad. Less than six figures.
I was gonna say 600,000. Okay.
Yeah, less than six figures at Michigan for the year.
But exactly, no, like college athletes have like they're like wrapped in this like aura that they're not allowed to be selfish about their future. When literally their profession is that's their future.
And that is the Round Ball podcast on Barstool Sports there that he was joining, Chad. But, he goes on to say that he is being selfish, but it took courage to take the money because of what he's leaving. He's leaving what could be, his full legacy in college. And I'm paraphrasing. And he's going to Kansas because he can make money off of NIL, which is all fair. That's all on the up and up. But I don't think it takes courage to take the money.
Well, the guy acts like maybe it was the kid. He sounded like a child that was doing the interviewing in that. Looked like a very young guy. But he made him sound like he's the Jackie Robinson of the transfer portal. Boy, Hunter's really opened the door for a lot of other athletes. I'm thinking, have you been watching college sports recently? Athletes leave programs they've been synonymous with playing with every single year for other opportunities, whether it be financial opportunities to win more games, whatever it may be. This is not courage. If you want to say that I'm stepping out of a legacy at Michigan to go try to win a national championship at Kansas because we can't do that at Michigan under Juwan Howard, and the way I'm being utilized at Michigan isn't right. If you want to say all those things, okay. If it's about winning, then yeah, maybe it is courageous to say, I've got a lifetime of being a Michigan man behind me. I could easily finish my career out there, try to go pro, and be known as a Michigan guy, but it took courage for me to go and try to win at a higher level in a different program. But it's not courageous to take more money and to sit there and bitch about not making six figures in college. I mean, come on. Like, we get a little out of control with just allowing any college athlete to say anything they want without putting them in check, because we've reached this system where they're always right and the adults are always wrong and the coach is always wrong and the college athlete's always right, and I just don't buy that. That's a dumb argument. So you took more money and left Michigan behind. Oh, by the way, you made almost six figures to not go to the NCAA tournament in your final year at Michigan.
Yeah.
So well done, Michigan Wolverines and Juwan Howard on that one. Couldn't even make the tournament. So you probably were overpaid, quite frankly, to be at Michigan. Now you're taking more money to go to a better program in Kansas, and that's somehow supposed to be applauded as courageous or like you're some trailblazer. Kids do this every year. And that's their right. They can do it, but don't act like it's courage.
He said, I don't think people realize how much courage it took for a guy who was there for 3 years, an All-American for the team, I did have a legacy there, and I basically gave that up to try to be selfish and do what's best for me in my career, not what's best for anybody else's career. That's what he said on the Round Ball podcast. Here's the other thing, too. He didn't go to the draft. That's the other thing. He's going to Kansas.
Yeah, it's not – courage is the wrong word. He has every right to do whatever he wants. And the guy doing an interview talking about, it's just seeing the college guys are doing this nonstop now. They have learned that the system is there for them as well, not just the coach and the school and the fans. They can manipulate the system and utilize it to their advantages, and that's what they've been doing year after year. This is nothing new what we're seeing from Hunter Dickinson. And
it sounds like, he does say, he's like, I wanted to stay, but it sounds like, hey, he's like, make me an offer. Put an offer out there that Kansas or Kentucky was going to be putting out there. That's the other story, too, to discuss at some point.
To me, there is courage in staying and sticking with something. And too often we overlook that level of courage, too.
Well, that's not – if he just goes to the draft, no one's talking about leaving for money, right? But now this is just a new element to where it's like, oh, I'm going to enter the portal. And, he's got he's able to play immediately based on his status. He jumps right in, and he's able to go to Kansas. But it's clear that Kansas offered him the most. But Chad's right.
More than Kentucky, apparently.
More than Kentucky, right? More than anyone. It sounds like, just based on just pure offer.
And hey,
this is the one no one's
he's got
willing to
every
match.
right to do it. It's within the rules.
That's right.
He can go for 1 year and go try to win a title at Kansas and make a bunch of money. Go have at it. Don't go on a podcast and say it took courage to do it. That's not courage.
John Morant back in the headlines for yet another wrong reason, flashing a gun on Instagram Live over the weekend. We discussed the repercussions that will come from this. What's already an indefinite suspension from team activities for the Memphis Grizzlies, who are well into the offseason now. We'll start there with the other headlines from the weekend as well on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter. that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Glad you're with us across the OutKick Network. We broadcast live on this Monday, hitting the headlines with you and more. You can join us in the chat, YouTube channel. If you're watching, we say thank you. Hopefully you've subscribed. If not, we hope you will. Hit the like button. And then also, if you're listening on this great radio partner, we say thank you as well. You can join us daily, 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Coming up, Doc Holliday will join us. He is the sports director for WMC TV5 in Memphis, where we will dive into Ja Morant and details behind what the Grizzlies can do, what he expects they will do, now that yet again he is on Instagram Live holding and waving a firearm while one of his buddies sits there and broadcasts this live on Instagram. This coming less than 2 months after he was suspended for 8 games and was sent to Florida for quote-unquote therapy, for counseling, I should say. That was what it was, counseling. Then he flew to New York and met with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, where Silver put out a statement at the time of the suspension saying, hey, we treat this seriously, and he knows where we come down on this. I'm paraphrasing. But, Chad, we read the full tenor of what Adam Silver was trying to get across. And then Morant tried to get that across with, in I know it was through statements, but in a sit-down interview with Jalen Rose, and you mentioned this, it comes across as a very scripted take where at the time he's trying to sound contrite. And here's Morant back in March.
You were at the spot, Shotgun Willie's. You were holding a gun, and we both know how dangerous that can be. Whose gun were you holding?
Well, the gun wasn't mine. It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence, but I take full responsibility for my actions. Made a bad mistake, and I can see the image that I painted over myself with my recent mistakes. But in the future, I'm gonna show everybody who Ja really is, what I'm about, and change this narrative.
So that's coming and stemming from all of the incidents that had been reported on and discussed at length, including the NBA investigating back in February that Morant and members of his crew were allegedly pointing a laser-dotted sight at Pacers players and personnel after a game. Morant had been accused of punching a teenager during a pickup game. It was also, I believe, Chad, within the details of that reporting, where he went inside to get a firearm, then to come out.
The teenager sued and claimed that he said threatening things about, now I'm going to go get my gun.
Yep.
And he went upstairs to do that. When
And
the
then
teenager
had it
left.
like in his belt, in his waist, in the belt. NBA's investigated the video of Morant showing off a handgun and shotgun Willie's. This is exactly what the conversation was in that audio. And he was suspended indefinitely for flashing a gun on Instagram Live, this coming down yesterday. Hasn't learned any type of lesson, and it's clear that based on who he's with off the court, nothing is going to change, and the NBA and the Grizzlies have to step in and do something more than just sending him off for a couple of days and then changing their travel habits, which is what the Grizzlies did.
It's also telling to me that Ja Morant and his representatives chose Jalen Rose as the guy to conduct the interview when he got out of his rehab facility or wherever he went for a few days, because that is about the softest of softballs you're going to receive is Jalen Rose. And they knew that. And that's why they did it. And I don't think that Ja Morant sounds the least bit contrite the way he's saying those words, that he wanted to change the narrative about himself. And narrator comes in and says, but he did not, because a few months later, a few weeks later, really, a couple months, we have this instant again. Now, when will we hear from Ja Morant? Because we will at some point. There's going to be a posted apology.
On Instagram Live.
There's going to be something. Yeah, there's going to be one of those notepads with an apology written. And will one of the excuses from Ja Morant be, a friend of mine went live on Instagram, I did not know he was doing that? I'm asking the question because that could be the defense of Ja Morant, that he didn't know that they were going live on Instagram. Now, it's a pretty hollow defense because it was still happening, right? But I do wonder how they handle this now. I'm talking about Team Morant, Team Ja, him and his publicist, his agent, whoever, how they get together and try to spin this.
The way they tried to spin it beyond what he said there to Jalen Rose was, his father's coming out and saying that, I take the blame for what's gone down, behind the scenes. And at the time, that was the push, right? It was, it's his group. It's not Ja. And that no longer fits. It's now on Ja Morant. To change the narrative about himself, that's coming from the league, and that's coming from his sponsors. That's coming from Nike, where he has his own shoe deal, his own signature shoe line, and that's coming from Powerade, owned by Coca-Cola, who was about to roll out their first marketing campaign for any player in 5 years, and they chose Ja Morant. And they pulled it before it even started. And reports were that Nike has said privately, hey, yeah, we want you to correct your image. And 8 weeks later, this is going down.
It's a good opportunity for Adam Silver. I mean, it really is. It sounds crazy to say this could be a good thing. This could be a good thing for Adam Silver's regime, for his management of the NBA and what they ultimately want to be.
But this is more than
this is also one that is going to be criticized, I think, regardless. If he's heavy-handed and says you're out for a year, that's going to get criticized as overly punitive. If he comes back and says, you got 8 games before, you sit out the first 16 games of the season, we'll double it up, that's going to be seen as way too light. So what does he ultimately do?
Well, what needs to happen needs to be more than just, let's react to how many games he's suspended for, instead of reacting to what are they doing to get this guy help? Because he's ruining what is set up to be a perfect storyline career. He's signed the max contract now as the rookie. That's going into effect next season. It can be upwards of $250 million plus if he's an NBA All-Pro. He's nowhere close to headed down that path, but he's got like $190 million fully guaranteed headed his way. And it's more than just, suspend him for a season. Well, where do you think this guy's going to be for a season if you do that? Doing this. So actually, if you want to change the culture, which is really behind the scenes what they're trying to do. I say behind the scenes, the conversation, what Kwame Brown's talking about, what Sauce Gardner's talking about, where, hey, man, we've all got guns, but we just don't show them on Instagram Live. This should be more than just, let's suspend him for a year, and if he does it again on Instagram Live, then we're going to be really pissed off. It's got to be more than that. Otherwise, nothing's changing. You're just suspending the guy for optics, and this is more than optics. It's optics on Morant's part, But just because of his stupidity doesn't mean the NBA needs to take a step back and actually trying to make sure that they give him every opportunity to get back and adjust where he was prior to this deal. Coming out of college, did you hear anything about this?
No.
In college?
No. I mean, granted, he was at Murray State, which isn't the most
but he was a national
spotlight
name
on you there.
He's a national name, though, at Murray State.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not reporters, in Murray, Kentucky, following him around, knowing one way or the other. So my point is, like, I don't think this was a problem.
We'll have a great guest to tell us, but I don't find it was a problem his rookie season.
I don't know how you fix stupid.
I don't.
What does the NBA do if he doesn't? If it's found that he doesn't have a problem mentally and he doesn't have some sort of addiction, then I don't know what the NBA does to a guy who just wants to live this stupid life. Well, if he thinks that's cool and that's his definition of cool, and he thinks the NBA is a bunch of squares and everyone else is wrong, I don't know. I don't know where the NBA's responsibility to make him smarter comes in. So right? That's the hard part.
But let's just be real here. He's either what Kwame Brown's alluding to, some rich dude pretending to be street, he's going to get himself killed, or he is, and it's going to be the opposite way around, where he's going to brandish something, playing a pickup game, and a kid's going to be shot. Yeah. Like, that's what comes to mind for me. Laser pointers at the Pacers. I mean, again, this is more than one incident. This is a string of circumstances that are no longer just wrong place, wrong time, or who you're hanging out with, or, oh, it was them, not me. I just happened to be there, and they got into it with people in the crowd, or, oh, there's Ja's dad arguing with Shannon Sharp at halftime. All of this comes together to where you just can't act like he just was diagnosed with a terminal illness and send him to treatment down in Florida and, hey, don't ask us any questions. He's just away from the team. The NBA is treating us like we're stupid when the stupidity's happening and playing out live on Instagram because nothing's changed. And again, this would be a different reaction if we were talking about what had taken place in March of 2021. But it happened in 2023, less than 2 months ago, that we're rehashing all the details again. And the new incidents continue to happen.
I just don't, from the league's perspective, right? I don't know what you can do for a guy who is just living this life. Pac-Man Jones comes to mind. I don't know there's any level of rehab. When Pac-Man Jones is playing, the NFL could have mandated for him that would have gotten him to not want to live a life as a criminal.
But they suspended him for a year. Actually, it was indefinitely, and then he had to get reinstated by Roger Goodell by showing certain things along the way.
And that's why I think a 1-year suspension is warranted, where there's a lot of criteria he has to meet. And a lot of that is just, don't take an Instagram live video of you with a weapon. How about that? Let's start there for a year.
Or hang out with people that are going to put you in that spot.
See if that happens. Because right now, Ja Morant is a threat to himself and society. If I'm at a Memphis Grizzlies game and Ja Morant walks in with his crew of guys, knowing what they've done to threaten people and what they're about and the way they publicly present themselves, and the fact they pointed a laser pointer at the Indiana Pacers, I'm not bringing my kids around them to meet Ja Morant. I'm running in the opposite direction. And that's because of him. That's what he wants to portray himself as.
And a year ago, we're seeing him get this type of money. The same league that's having to figure this out is also verifying. And sponsors, too, were vetting him then.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It was all set up there, and now we're seeing this calendar play out. And it hasn't played out over a course of like 5 years. This has been playing out over a course of a couple months, going back to last summer, and then the reporters got involved, and everything started to trickle out.
Well, it's an interesting conversation trying to figure out where does the league's ability to help and or responsibility to help or do something extra fall in, because I would be sympathetic to any league that has a really talented athlete player in their league that they've suspended before, they've done seminars with, they've talked to, they've encouraged to get help, and that person either doesn't really have a problem other than the fact they just want to live a criminal lifestyle. And then where does the league come in, and where's their responsibility with that?
All I'm hearing, though, is whenever this took place the last time it went down, Charles Barkley's going on inside the NBA saying, we've got to get this dude some help. And all we've discussed is, okay, what's the suspension like? If that's true, then that needs to be the focus of how you get this guy and who needs to be able to reach out to him and get through to him. Because right now, the only people he's hanging out with are the same people that knew that all this went down, and they're going live on Instagram again.
You can't get someone help that doesn't want it.
Yeah, you can't, but I also just don't say – it's like saying suspend him for a year, but as soon as the season's over, this is popping up again. We know where this is headed.
Yeah, but I don't know what you want the league to do with that. If a guy wants to go to a rehab facility for 4 days and act like he's changed, they can't make him want to get help.
They let him play 8 games later, is my point.
But now you're saying that a suspension is not enough. They've got to do more. So what? What do you do for a guy who doesn't want help?
They played by his rules last time. They treated him like he had an illness. And now they have to treat him like he's a threat to the shield, to the brand. But at the same time, actually have some wherewithal to figure out and listen to your former players and current players who are saying the same thing, that this guy needs a wake-up call. And it's not going to come from anyone involved in his life right now. And that's extremely sad. And no one gives a damn about it, honestly. All they care about are the clicks and the headlines and showing the video. And the kid that came out of Murray State, from what we were saying and what we saw and what was being reported, there were no issues like this from what we were seeing on the front end. Now he's going live boasting about it. It's like playing a character. That's my thing, is where'd the character come from? Why the villain role? Because he's playing the heel for who? Who's he impressing? Why does he feel the need to do this?
And he only does it around that crew, we believe, because once he goes on camera on ESPN with Jalen Rose, he's repeating a lot of lines that a publicist would tell him to repeat about, I'm going to change the narrative. What else he says there? I don't condone violence in any way.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is a guy who's alleged to have punched a high school kid, to have threatened that kid with a gun, who definitely went to a mall to attack someone with his friends.
All while
because
being
of his,
Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant.
Of course you condone violence. So I don't – look, here's what happens if you don't want to change. Or if you don't have a medical condition, an addiction problem, a mental illness, or anything else, and you feel like you're in the right and you don't want to change. Even if you don't really deep down feel like you're in the right and you don't want to change, there's one of two ways to go about that. I don't know how the league comes into this, honestly. I don't know what the league can do other than suspend him to make him not their problem anymore if he goes and does something bad. He's going to go to jail. And we can talk about this with our next guest. I have seen this before. It's either rehab, prison, or death. And all you can pray is that it's not the death of someone innocent.
And
with him and his crew. And I'm telling you, that's where this is probably headed.
And my point is, and I don't want it to get this way. I want to come across as, I want to make sure it's being noted that the suspension itself, or if he ends up in prison, is on him. But let's not pretend suspend him. The brands are taking a step back, and it's because they don't want it to happen on their watch. They want to don't just
CYA for
don't
sure.
just act like you're helping the dude.
It's all CYA
instead of actually helping the dude. And I don't know where that comes down or what number of games that equals if it doesn't have things behind the scenes that are actually going to be enforced. Because it's clear nothing that they talked about at the NBA office face-to-face was enforced whatsoever. He was fined like $600,000 for missing those games.
Yep.
That's it. Coming up, Doc Holliday joins us.
By the way, the guy who should be, and we'll talk about this at Doc Holliday, the guy who should be helping him and being there and cutting out these friends in his life is his father, who is more interested in being a celebrity courtside at games and getting into fights with other fans and other players instead of helping his son. And that's the crux of this problem right now for John Morant. It's himself, and it's his dad not being the one to cut this out.
And his mom is allegedly getting upset with the manager at Foot Locker.
And saying, I'm going to get my son down here to hurt you.
Yeah. I mean,
parents are a problem.
It is bizarre.
There's no doubt the parents are a problem.
We'll dive a bit deeper with our next guest. Doc Holliday is the sports director for WMC-TV 5 in Memphis. Was a Memphis Tiger. Played football in the same era that Penny Hardaway was on the hardwood. We discussed this and more straight ahead with Doc Holliday on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care. My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Glad you're with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. We've been discussing Ja Morant and another suspension headed his way, already suspended indefinitely for all Grizzlies activities moving forward. Doc Holliday is with WMC TV5. He's a sports director there in Memphis, former Memphis Tiger as well. Doc, thank you for the time, man, and just your initial reaction where you see on video on Instagram Live Ja Morant with a handgun in a car yet again.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me, man. My initial reaction was shock. I was speechless, disappointed. I couldn't understand that we were back in this situation, in this position so soon. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't think it was never going to happen again, but just 2 months after we had a similar situation with Ja Morant. So I was, I was shocked. I really, like I said, I woke up on Sunday morning and, Jay Will, the former Duke basketball player who's, he texts me, and I wake up, I'm looking, he's like, Doc, what's up? You seen I'm like, video of Ja. So I go and look at it and I just look at the phone for a second and I'm just like, is this recent? Are we serious? So it's just extremely disappointed, man, and upset with the young man, the young Royal. I mean, I'm not throwing him away, but just extremely disappointed and just speechless.
We're here in Nashville, so we're a close drive from Memphis, but we're not there in Memphis like you are, Doc. And the question that everyone that's not there keeps asking is, what happened? Because this was one of the true feel-good stories of the NBA when he left Murray State and started with the Grizzlies. And then you get, one incident, and then there's the report of another incident that happened in the past, and all these things start to happen. Has this been a consistent theme since he's been there? What has gone on exactly?
Well, let me say this, man. I know a lot of things and a lot of talk on Ja Morant because he's made some immature mistakes and some immature decisions. And I'll say that, I was a football star here in Memphis, born and raised here in Memphis, played college, played NFL, played CFL. And I made a lot of dumb, immature decisions too, at 23, at 33, even at 43. And I think what we're seeing is that, and I try to get people to understand that when you're a star athlete, athletes have a warped sense of reality, man. It's when you're an athlete, then you are a professional college athlete, professional athlete, then you're a superstar athlete. Those are 3 and 4 different things, man. So when you're able to do things, when you're an athlete and a star athlete and you're not held accountable for those things, you think it's okay to act that way. Other people get in trouble for doing things, but you don't get in trouble for doing things. So your reality becomes warped because that's your reality. I think with Ja, he's never been arrested. When you see him, he's respectful. When I talk to him and when I see him, and when I talk to T, he's respectful. But I think it's the fact of, fame and celebrity, man, and just being a superstar athlete and really not knowing how to deal with that and really not knowing what comes with that. And really not ever being held accountable for things that you do and being punished for those things. So I'm glad to see that he is being punished for those things because I know when I was in high school, when I was in college, I'm cutting class, I'm doing things, I'm not getting in trouble at the time. I'm going to class, not really taking, not doing my work, but I'm getting past. Now at the time, I'm thinking it's cool. But they didn't hold me accountable. Now looking back, that kind of pissed me off because I wish they would have whooped me and disciplined me. So I think that's what we're seeing with Ja, man. You're just seeing an entitlement for a superstar athlete, someone who's probably never been held accountable for those things because he's been a star athlete for a long time. And now you're seeing that playing out right in front of our eyes.
And Doc, what we were discussing is, well, the Grizzlies have invested the max behind them, right? And there's no Nike with the signature shoe deal for him. They Powerade and Coca-Cola about to have him as the face of their marketing campaign, the first individual campaign in 5 years. They're not doing that for this version of Ja Morant. I didn't hear a lot of this through the OVC, through the first couple years when he's with the Grizzlies. Did something change, or was it just simply, as you're putting it, whoever he's with behind the scenes, the Grizzlies just look the other way? I don't know how to view it through the lens of what you've seen there.
I think, what changed? Outstanding, crazy celebrity fame and success. and the bank account changes. When the bank account changes, people treat you differently. And when you have, like, I grew up here in Memphis in the inner city, 2-parent household. My mom died when I was 11, so my dad raised me and my brothers and sisters, but I still had a lot of time to get into a lot of different situations. But I had friends, real friends who were in the streets. You know, they went to jail for murder. They went to jail for robbery. They sold drugs, and a lot of them still do, and they did. But they didn't allow me to come around them to do those things. Even though in my head, I want to come hang with you all. I want to do what you all doing. You know, I didn't know everything that they was doing, but let me roll with you. They like, nah, they used to leave me. My cousins used to leave me. My friends used to leave. I was like, why y'all leave me, man? They knew what they were going to do, but they didn't want me to have anything to do with that. And I think what changed is just celebrity, bank account, money, access to things, access to people. And fame is extremely addictive. And if you're not used to that, you can get drunk off of it. You can get drunk off of it, and it can cause you to make some serious mistakes. Now, thankfully for Ja, and thank God, he hasn't gotten hurt behind some of the things that he's done, and no one close to him has gotten hurt. But if you don't change, eventually, we'll always hear the thunder before the lightning now. So God gives you the thunder before the lightning. I had to learn that. A lot of people I know had to learn that, and hopefully Ja is learning that. Now, you're hitting him in the pocket. He lost his $600,000, and I tell people, man, because I played NFL football, I had teammates. They would get fined. Lawrence Phillips was one of my best friends when I played for the Rams, and we know he ended up going to prison and passing away. God, he got suspended a lot, but I used to hear him call the bank, and you hear the bank, your account say, your account balance is $1.7 million. He's listening to that. He's not worried about the $70,000 or $80,000 they just took from him. So Ja could be in that situation. He lost $600,000. He's like, I didn't even see that $600,000. I just know I still got $4 million in the bank. So, that's not going to really change anything I'm doing or how I'm thinking.
Well, and I think it's easier said than done when you look at the situation and say, well, get rid of those friends, get new friends, get better friends. It's especially easier said than done when you're saying your family's not helping you out. Cut your parents out, as an example. What would your advice be, Doc? You said that you grew up in Memphis in difficult circumstances. When you see this from the outside, if Ja Morant goes to you and says, what should I do? What would your advice be to him right now?
First of all, you got to grow up, man. You got to listen to people that's reaching out that really care for you. Don't get mad when somebody come at you and try to discipline you and tell you what you're wrong. Because, when you love your children, like my dad loved me, but he whooped me. If I'm doing wrong, you got to pull my coattail, man. And I have to sit him down. We have to have a real conversation, my guy. Get out your feelings. This is what God has blessed you with, ability and talent that not many people are blessed with. We have many great basketball players, but this dude is an athlete on a whole different level. You can't coach what he has. You can't teach what he has. And I have to tell him, I would tell him, you have a responsibility to the Creator, man, who blessed you with all this talent, good looks, you're well-spoken, you have charisma, you have personality, you have all of those things, and you have an incredible athletic ability. That's why Nike wanted to partner with you. That's why Powerade wanted to partner with you. It's not just about your athletic ability, it's about your look. It's about how you sound. It's about how you carry yourself. It's about because you have personality. And I would tell them, what do you want to do for your life, man? Because the way I live my life, I wake up, I'd be like, okay, God, how can I serve you today? Because God gave you all those abilities, man. You got to be a good steward of that. That's what I would tell them. You got to answer to the Creator. Everything you do, you got to answer to Him. You don't want Him to take their talent from you. So that's what I would tell them. Get out your feelings, and even if you get mad and you're in your feelings, I'm going to tell you what needs to be said. Get out of these streets. Leave that alone. The gun life, glorifying the gun life. I grew up with plenty of people that they had to carry a pistol to survive because they were doing things that required them to have a pistol. Because they were robbing people, they were selling drugs, they were putting themselves in compromising positions. So they had to carry a pistol for survival and for defense. And I know a lot of them was using it to do things they shouldn't be doing. But that's not it. Because everybody I know, and I tell them, look, man, I can look back in the past. You can't look into the future. I see where that road is heading because I was on that road. I had a detour, I had blocks, I had defenders, but I had best friends that were on that road. Some of them did 30 years in prison, 27, 25, 23, 22, and I'm not exaggerating. Now they're out and they're like, man, what was I thinking as a young man? We wasn't thinking. So that's what I would tell him. And whether he hears or forbears, he would have to deal with it, and I'd be like, I don't care if you ever talk to me again, my man. I'm trying to save your life. Now I'll holler at you.
Doc Holliday with us, former Memphis Tiger.
Well said.
Now he's the sports director, WMC TV 5 there in Memphis. Doc, the other thing that I've noticed in the reaction to it, in former players, current players, some delete tweets, some not, they respond immediately, hey, Sauce Gardner, for instance, put out, like, hey, man, we've all got guns. We just don't go on Instagram Live with it. Is there an underlying culture with this that Ja's just going live with, and we're not discussing more about this instead of it's Ja Morant doing this all the time? If everyone's walking around with guns, the leagues, not just the NBA, but the leagues need to do more than just suspend a player.
Well, it's nothing. It's legal to have a gun. You're right. So you can't really be mad at them for having a gun. But when you're part of a private entity, they have do's and don'ts.
Right.
Second Amendment, you got constitutional rights. But when you make a contract and deal with a private entity, constitutional rights, they can't mess with you about your constitutional rights, but they still have do's and don'ts. This is what you don't do. So he's right. You don't have to show your gun. That's a dangerous thing to do, to be always showing your gun. So, because when you're out and you're in a situation, you may not have a gun on you, or you may not be ready to pull it, but you get to arguing with someone, or they see you and they automatically get defensive and they want to try you. They know you have a propensity of carrying a pistol with you. So if anything happens, you bump me, you step on my shoe, they might get out and start throwing hot rocks at you before you even know it, because they know you carry a weapon. So you don't have to show everybody, especially you, Ja. Get security. You don't have to carry that stick with you all the time. Get bodyguards, get security. And right in this latest video, you were sitting in the truck. I don't know you were driving. You were just sitting in the truck with your friends. There was no reason to pull that pistol out. For what? For clicks, for views? I mean, celebrity and fame is a dangerous thing, and it destroys a lot of people.
We saw the report about Dylan Brooks will not be back under any circumstances. The reports that they were having to hold private team meetings and discuss road etiquette and how to behave on the road this year with the Grizzlies because of some things like we saw with Ja Morant. What is the culture right now of that Grizzlies organization, Doc? Are they at a crossroads at this point with this also separate and also including Ja Morant and everything going on?
You know what, man, fellas, the sad part or the frustrating part is the Grizzlies is a great organization, man. They treat their players with respect. They treat them with love. It's a great culture. Desmond Bain is outstanding. Jaren Jackson Jr. is outstanding. Tyus Jones is outstanding. Steven Adams is outstanding. Xavier Tillman is humble and outstanding. Brandon Clark is humble and outstanding. Luke Kennard is humble and outstanding. I could go on and on with players on their team. You just have the superstar who has made mistakes. Dylan Brooks don't get in any trouble, man. Dylan Brooks has been here in Memphis for 6 years. You never hear about any of them doing anything in the streets. And I'm still got my ear to the streets. So the organization is bad because the organization overall gets a negative image placed on them because of what their superstar is doing. But the organization is well run. Zach Kleiman is doing a great job. Look how he's assembled this team and put these pieces together. Taylor Jenkins dealing with all the distractions that comes with this. And what Dylan did, Dylan just talking trash to people on the basketball court. That's what you're supposed to do. He gets slapped for talking trash to people on the basketball.
You don't
court.
talk. Yeah,
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Don't talk trash to the
like,
king.
That's what you're supposed to do. Huh?
You don't do that to LeBron, though.
Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you something. Look, I'm one of those. I'm gonna try you, even though he tried him and he got done in. I ain't mad at what he said. LeBron is just make sure when you run your mouth, when LeBron do you in, make sure don't ignore us after the games like he did.
So, what do you think the league does, Doc? What are you hearing today in response to what we saw on Instagram and the fact that the Grizzlies put the statement out immediately?
Oh, he's definitely getting this. I think we know he's definitely getting a double-digit game suspension. I hate to speculate because I'm not in the league, but if they just gave you 8 games, and they just gave him 8 games,
right?
Then he set out a couple of more. I think he didn't play when he was first eligible to come back. So whatever was said in that meeting with Adam Silver, and they gave you those 8 games. I'm pretty sure he gave them some kind of reassurance, like, yeah, I'm going to do better. I'm going to make better decisions, this, that, and the other. And they probably told him, like, look, we can't have this again. It's almost like, Ja's on probation. It's like when you commit a crime and you get probation, and while you still on probation, you commit a crime, guess what? They're going to run that other charge back on top of the new charge. So it's going to be more repercussions. So I think he definitely is going to be it's going to be a double-digit suspension, probably 15 to 20 games, and I can't be mad about it.
So who's the bigger star in Memphis, Ja Morant or your former college buddy, Penny Hardaway?
Penny Hardaway. It's not close, man. It's not.
Penny Hardaway can do no wrong in Memphis, right? I mean, there's nothing that guy could do wrong there.
Look, Penny is like my brother. When we were at Memphis together, that's when we became real close. But, it's really, Penny is literally the king of Memphis. So now he can't, because it's so much. We looking at the basketball, there's so much Penny has done as far as taking care of people in the community, mentoring people, man, spending his own money to do a lot of things to feed people, make sure they're taken care of. So unless, there's no way that anybody can really, catch up with Penny unless God comes down here in human form. That's probably the only person.
He was cool with us during the high school days whenever he's winning state championships.
We called some of his state championship games when he was at East.
But
exactly.
With the same kids that you're talking about that he was helping out in the middle school age with Team Penny and others. Doc, thank you for the perspective, man. Hopefully, I hope it doesn't come with another video or something else in a negative tone with Ja Morant, but would love your reaction from the Memphis side of things whenever a suspension is handed down, and if it takes a while, why it's taking a while.
Thank you all for having me, man. I still believe in Ja. I love Ja, his whole family, man. I'm pulling for him. We make mistakes, man. I just hope he learns from this.
Yeah, but thank you, Doc.
Thanks, Doc.
Holiday
Appreciate it.
Great chat there. And you can follow the socials there on the screen for more. WMC TV5, sports director. They'll be talking about that a lot.
Yes, that is going to be the topic for a while. No hesitation, by the way. Penny Hardaway is king of Memphis, not Ja Morant.
I knew you knew the answer before you asked it, though.
Yeah. I'd say Ja's the bigger national name and star. Actually, I don't know. Penny Hardaway had a national Little Penny ad campaign with Chris Rock. If you're old enough to remember that, like I am, with Chris Rock voicing Penny Hardaway.
Yeah.
I'm saying for anyone else watching, listening.
That might go to your point,
remember.
though.
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
I know.
Little Penny. They should bring that back. That's the new Nike ad. Just replace Jaws with Little Penny coming back. You have Powerade, Little Penny.
Ja?
Yeah, well, no, you have Little Penny.
Little Ja could. I mean, if he keeps his nose clean, doesn't get any more trouble.
He's just the opposite.
Maybe a Little Ja could resuscitate his image.
He's the opposite of Ja Morant, you're saying?
Yeah, we could resuscitate his image.
He's the therapist?
This could be the change needed. Little Ja.
Coming up, we'll dive back into some other headlines. We've got Tom Brady and the Raiders. I thought the rumor mill was already about this with Tom Brady playing, not owning a portion of the Las Vegas Raiders. Plus, we've got the Mets who can practically own all of Major League Baseball, all-star roster, but the record, pitching staff, Chad's happy. You're a Braves fan.
It's also it's a good time we come back to remind everyone that it's May. It's mid-May.
Looks really bad.
It's mid-May.
Details on that next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws the no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Chad, consider this. Vegas, they already own the sports world, right? I mean, all the gambling aspects of it. They've got every league, every major
They
league
own a lot.
clamoring to be there.
Yep.
LeBron wants to own an NBA team there.
They're all about to be there.
That's right. And
the A's building the new park.
Las Vegas Golden Knights back in the Western Conference Finals in the NHL. Point being, they could also have Tom Brady. Tom Brady's already an investor in the WNBA, the Aces, which is also owned by Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders. And reports are that Tom Brady is looking into buying a portion and investing into the Raiders. Every NFL team can have up to 25 separate investors among an ownership group. This would be one of those. But with the Raiders, this would be the brand. This would be the Brady brand joining up with Mark Davis. And I can't help but think that, man, Gronk all but said it was all set up for them to go and be with the Raiders and join up and actually play. And now it's clear that Brady's got a good relationship with Davis just based on these reports. No one's confirming this. The NFL has declined comment. Don Yee is who you go through to get a comment from Brady. Don Yee is declining comment. He's his agent. Yeah, I mean, sounds like it's happening, and it's probably been in the works since he invested in the Aces recently.
This would not affect his contract with Fox Sports.
No,
because it's only the controlling owner, or it's also
Fox
only it's only if you have some sort of controlling managerial part with a network, because then you could manipulate the television contracts that way. So he's fine to do that if he wants. There were some reports that maybe not, that he'll actually go through with the contract with Fox, that there's still some questions out there about that. Yeah, I mean, here's where I fall on this. Is Tom Brady, like Magic Johnson, do we really look at Magic Johnson as a part of the Los Angeles Dodgers, even though he's a small minority stake owner in it? Tom Brady, if he just disappears and he's a small part of the Raiders, I want more Tom Brady than that. It's kind of the way I felt about Peyton Manning. I want Peyton Manning to do the things because I love Peyton Manning, where I'm getting Peyton Manning content the most. If you go and you're in a front office for a team, you're not getting much Peyton Manning content. I kind of feel the same about Tom Brady. He can do whatever he wants. This is me speaking selfishly now. I want whatever Tom Brady can go do where I get good Tom Brady content, whether that be a job in the media or something that's forward-facing. I don't know that a very small minority ownership stake in the Raiders mixed with nothing else would do that.
Well, I'm just intrigued by the business strategy of everything he's compiling, because it's not the first time he's done this. He spoke with Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, about a minority stake in the Dolphins organization twice, according to reports, 2021 and 2022. And then he was, on the yacht in 2019? Whenever all the tampering took place.
That was 2019.
Came out, and then they lost the first-round draft pick with all this.
Yep,
whenever he ended up with
Tampa.
Tampa.
That was his last year with...
was it first year in Tampa or was the last year in New England?
I think it was the last year in New England.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's 2019.
But you've got, in recent years, you've got the Raiders who have put out, flashes of bringing in different... They're trying to bring in stars, right? They're in Vegas now. They had Gruden, all of it. Brady's on a different platform with that, even as a small, and what would be considered a small investor in team ownership. Matt Ryan, speaking of quarterbacks, he is joining CBS. He put out that he's joining the CBS broadcast team in a booth. Didn't say which one. Nothing's been reported there in that regard. But he also said this isn't a retirement post with a winking. You're not joining the NFL and CBS family unless you think it's probably the end of what was a 15-year career with an MVP award. But I'm intrigued to see if he latches on with the team due to injury somewhere, or if he ends up with CBS throughout the season on one of the broadcast crews and works his way up.
Feels like someone's going to pick him up, to me. If I had to guess right now, it feels like someone's going to take a chance on Matt Ryan. If If he's determined to not be done playing, then he's going to have that opportunity. I also think he is going to be great on television.
I do too.
I've long thought that about Matt Ryan, just watching him interviewed. He's going to be really good. And he is also the type that I think will not hold back, but he's going to be able to navigate it in a professional way where he's not going to burn bridges. That's a rare quality to have when you're an analyst, where you can be critical and honest but not burn bridges. I think he's going to have that ability.
And, I mean, we'll get into some stories later this week where you've got current players who don't know about big moments in history. I wonder.
Oh, this is a great story.
If you're going to have
a bigger conversation.
People eventually don't even know Matt Ryan played in the NFL. It's like, oh, the broadcaster?
He lost a big lead in the Super Bowl one year? That guy?
That same guy?
That happened?
Back
the
at
Falcons
it tomorrow,
played in a
3
Super
o'clock
Bowl?
Eastern for Hot Mic across the OutKick Network.